Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today it's time to talk about brothers. It's time for all of the hosts of the show to get real sad. And I am joined, as always, by Billy Little Brother Rothert.
You know, it's the first time in my life that I've been a little brother. I'm assuming Pete's considered big only because Pete himself is, in all ways of definition, big.
I think I've earned it. I'll be honest.
And that other voice is Pete Big Brother Busby, and cause alliteration.
What's going on, everybody? Glad to tune back in. Animal fact for this week, I have two. Yet again.
That's
cool
crazy.
Ones. Yep, two cool short ones. So one, catfish can taste with their whole body.
What?
Yep.
Wait. So does that mean that when a catfish is boning down, they're getting a mouthful as well?
So I'll read the first line of the article. This is a site. I guess I'll cite the journal article. Fine structure of taste buds in the barbel of the catfish, Ictularis punctatus. This is from Cell and Tissue Research by, I don't know why I'm listing this, but Nicola Grover Johnson and Albert Farbman. So shout out to our catfish enthusiast listeners.
Those are my favorite catfish scientists.
I know, they're the best.
Wowzers.
Taste buds occur in the epithelium of the catfish barbel along its entire length. Whole body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wowzers.
That's the first one. Second one, a cat's nose is ridged with a unique pattern, like a fingerprint.
Oh.
So each cat has a unique nose print.
So
that's way cute and amazing.
So what you're saying to me is when a cat gets arrested, they have to put a little
Yep.
black on its nose and then dip its head onto a piece of paper? Mittens.
So like the
Mittens,
second
we can't
fact,
have this.
the second fact was our daily dose of cute, and the first fact was just like weird. This is a weird amalgamation of like catfish, but like eroticism and like I just everything they're doing is a taste experience. I don't know.
Tough life, man.
They're all foodies all the time.
Yeah, and yet they eat garbage.
Yeah. They just wallow in the filth at the bottom of a river, and they're just always licking it.
I mean, I guess I wish I liked everything. Like, I could taste everything, and I liked it all.
That seems like a completely just like life just consumed by pleasure at all times. It's like if everything tasted good and your whole body was all over it.
Oh,
is that what ecstasy is supposed to be like?
Yes, sure. Catfish are high on E all the time.
Oh, man. That makes so much sense.
All those party drugs were flushing.
Oh, that's got to be it. It's all for the catfish.
I just like the idea that Hedonism Bot is just a catfish.
My world has opened up.
Nom nom. All right,
so we're talking about a video game
we're
today.
going to talk about Brothers, a very sad, very emotionally moving game.
Time to get serious.
Let me pull up Brothers. I should have done this before we started, but that's fine.
Your notes?
No,
well, while
not
you're
my
doing
notes.
this, I could hit us up with the intro story.
Yeah.
No. I mean, we got to do other stuff. Brothers by 505. Oh no, Starbreeze Studios.
Gotcha.
Publisher.
Starberry.
Starbreeze.
Not like Stefan Marbury, right? I'm assuming.
No.
Okay.
Starbreeze.
Starbreeze, not Starberries.
Gotcha. Starbreeze. That makes more sense.
Yes. But before we start talking about Brothers, just to remind... Oh, we actually do have an email. We have an email. Let me... Must get emails. Must find emails. We have an email, and if you want to send an email, you can do so by sending us an email, or you can tweet at us at thatpinguino on Twitter or at deeplistenspod. You can send us an email, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com, or you could go to our comment sections, deeplistens.libsyn.com, and you could sound something like this lunatic who keeps sending us emails. This comes from Chris Zombie Pie Redacted. He can reach us other ways, but this is fine.
It's nice that it goes through formal channels, though.
I do like it. Dear Deep Listens crew, my email pertains to your Cuphead podcast. First, you debated at length why Cuphead's art style draws a nostalgic response from audiences young and old. The podcast shared beautiful, complex, and well-thought-out arguments why this is the case.
Yes.
But...
You are all noted philosophers and intellectuals above my pay grade for analyzing art historically. But, Jesus fuck, I think the most straightforward answer is the right one here. Don't y'all know one of the largest multimedia empires in modern human history sells this exact art style to children the moment they pass through their mother's birth canals?
Which one's he talking about?
Disney.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, they're famous.
This same empire has a cartoony wonderscape they call the happiest place on Earth, which colorfully showcases the evolution of their rodent mascot. And maybe their leading competition, a company who created the most iconic rabbit in animation history, also plays a role in shoveling nostalgic continuity for old-school animation down young children's throats. And maybe, just maybe, these two companies have played a massive part in ensuring their classical works of animation never enter the public domain. On a more mechanical note, I'd like to talk about why I honestly didn't enjoy Cuphead. I recently played the game with a friend, and during our first playthrough, I noticed my friend was allowing every pink bullet to whiz past him. While I originally wanted to get angry, I soon discovered he was colorblind, and pink is not a color he can easily see. This meant the boss fights that require parrying were virtually impossible. Now, I know the developers of Cuphead are a small team, but solutions to colorblindness aren't that hard to come by. And let's not forget, Gino and I moderate a video game website run by two notable colorblind gamers. Putting a distinct pattern on the pink bullets wouldn't have taken that much time out of the developer's schedule. Hell, an optional different color you can toggle in the menu would have sufficed. But lacking these two options means the only viable version of Cuphead for my friend is a monochromatic version, which is only accessible if you complete the game as a pacifist. This design decision is downright irresponsible because there's no warning that it might be unplayable for colorblind gamers. Either way, best wishes, and tell Gino he's the murderer of my dreams for one day being free from Final Fantasy. Thank you. Thank you, ZP. So what did you... I think I agree. Some of the nostalgia for Cuphead and that art style is definitely because Disney has monopolized the childhoods of American children.
I mean, 90% of, like, if you ask a question, 90% of the answer is usually just, well, because capitalism. And like, oh, yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Yep. Hey, they give this to you as a child, and they've convinced all the parents that this is the thing that's acceptable for you to have, and so everyone now has fond memories of this thing that should not relate to them in any particular way.
Well, I mean, I think ZP's got a point that almost in a sense, like, of course, these companies have generated an art style that is iconic, and they've safeguarded it through like years and years and massive amounts of money of legal protections. But I think the point that we were trying to get, which is that ultimately, if this game didn't have this art style, would we still like it? That question hasn't been fully answered, and it wasn't really challenged by ZP's point. I think ZP had good thoughts that, like, of course this game has a successful art style. It's been crafted, and we've been conditioned to like it. But the question was, if it had a different art style that was maybe unique or independent, would the mechanics alone in isolation be enough to make this game interesting and as enjoyable as it was? And the answer is probably no.
No, probably
I mean,
not.
it's a decent side-scrolling bullet hell game reminiscent of like Contra or similar games to it, but just those mechanics alone aren't interesting enough to make it good. It had to use this art style, and I'm not faulting the game. Cuphead's good overall, but without this artistic choice, it wouldn't have gone as far as it did.
Yeah, and I think he was more responding to Pete's question of why nostalgia for this thing that we were not alive to be to have seen in its time. And I think that ZP's answer is probably the correct. He's probably the correct one, but I think the other arguments we made contribute to that.
Right. I think the sub question ultimately is the more interesting one anyway. What's the line at which point you could no longer, like, what's the line, like we said, about between history and nostalgia?
Yeah, and I think the second part of that, the color blindness thing, I thought of it when I was playing it, but thanks ZP for bringing it up because I forgot to bring it up during the show.
Fair point, absolutely.
I noticed that immediately. Like, if I was like, that game is busy for someone who has full ability to discern colors, let alone if you have any sort of red, blue, or anything like that. It could be pretty rough.
You know, my friend Aaron, Gino, he would have the exact same issue. Because one of the colors specifically that he has a hard time discerning is pink. Pink and brown seem to be the exact same colors for him. So those are just in his case there wasn't a lot of brown in the game, so that might have been okay, but those two colors are indistinguishable for him, and that may have made it not unplayable but certainly different. And I, having no experience building a game or making my own game, don't know what it's like to have to code something into a game, but just it seems that like a color swap option shouldn't be that hard.
Well, it really depends on how they colored those bullets. It seemed like some of them, they were just palette swaps of the same sprite, but in some cases the pink objects had different properties. I don't think it would necessarily be that difficult to have made a palette swap that wasn't just, Control F this color replaced with this color. But if they had just spent a little bit of time making some alternate options, I think it would have probably paid off.
Like if it had like a unique particle effect, that could have been a way to. I mean, I'm leaving the realm of could this be coded or not, because I still don't know, but maybe a different particle effect would be discernible regardless of color.
Yeah. Patterns are usually how games get around this for color blindness. Most games that are really cognizant of this will put in pattern options, they'll put in color options, they'll put in mixtures of pattern and color, because everyone's color blindness is slightly different. So the games that go the extra mile on this really try a few different approaches, and Cuphead tried none. So it really, anything would have been better than what they did, but I don't know which, you'd really have to play test it and develop with colorblind people in mind. And it's the sort of thing that I could see them patching in, thankfully. It's not a gigantic endeavor, I don't think, to add a colorblind mode for just this one type of bullet. It's not like Ikaruga or something where the entire game is about two colors. It's really this mechanic that only applies in a few boss fights, and then if you ignored it for the whole game, you'd be fine.
I mean, in fact, you should ignore it for most of the game, because
yes.
it's sometimes kills you.
Very much so. So, yeah, ZP's friend might have actually been having an easier time with it because he just didn't try to parry anything ever. So with that in mind, thank you, and remember to send in other emails. Thank you, ZP. So it's time to talk about Brothers. Billy, what is Brothers? Oh, Billy, you've muted your microphone.
Sorry about that. So Brothers ultimately would be classified as sort of a very story-focused adventure platforming game where you're presented with this young boy at the very opening sequence of the game. The young boy, who is later revealed to be the younger of the two brothers, is giving respects before an unnamed grave, but is soon to be revealed as the grave of his mother. And a sad start to this game is that we learn that the young boy's mother died from drowning after they were out at sea in what appeared to be a rowboat, and he tried to save her but was unable to do so. So he sort of had to watch his own mother drown to death.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is the first.
She literally slipped through his fingers.
She did die in front of him. This caused an ultimate fear of swimming in water in the younger brother. We're then introduced to the older brother, and these two young boys at the very beginning of the game carry their sick father to a doctor who says, this is not looking good. There may be one way to save him, and it's to travel to this proverbial tree of life, gather some tree of life juice, and come back. So two young boys go on an adventure through the landscape, traveling through numerous different environments to get to this mystical tree, collect some of its life-saving nectar or like fountain of youth water, and return to heal their sick father. We learn from the very beginning of the game that these boys have faced loss, and it's basically just one sad gut punch after another for the entire game.
Yep.
But that's the ultimate driving storytelling narrative point for Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. And that should start us off with the introduction to Brothers.
Yeah, so the gameplay of Brothers is pretty unique. It has a very different control scheme from anything I've ever played. You play both of the brothers simultaneously. Now, if you're using a controller, that means that each thumbstick is one of the brothers, and then there's an action button for each of them, and the action button is context sensitive depending on what you need to do. So you're simultaneously moving each of them, and you need to solve puzzles by, one brother has to turn a winch while the other brother is climbing something, and you do all sorts of stuff like that throughout the game. And it makes very good use of the control scheme, but it's also pretty unintuitive, I think, at first blush.
Oh, it's super hard.
I think the word would be like disorienting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I think it's easy to understand, but hard to pull off.
It's like spending like 3 hours trying to rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time.
Yeah.
But, you need to do a whole bunch of other stuff too. Like, that's oversimplifying, but that's the basic sensation of the thing.
Yeah, it's that, and then also kind of cross-eyed because focusing on this, depending on how wide your screen is, sometimes it's hard to keep both of the brothers not in your field of vision, but in focus at all times. Because if you're under attack or something, you can't let either of the brothers die. So you need. I
didn't have that problem, actually.
I had it occasionally. It wasn't an all-the-time thing. But thankfully, it's not like a fast-action game where you're getting attacked.
We'll talk about it with mechanics and stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of the opening of the game? Like, it really, as soon as you start, it lets you know what it's about real quick. With the dad and the brother scared of water. I think the opening section does a pretty good job.
This game has another unique component, which is sort of the absence of language. Just touching on this really quick, and then we'll examine it a little more in depth later, I'm sure. But this game has dialogue per se, but it's in a made-up language that no one can understand.
Yeah, it's like Sims dialogue.
So it's basically scriptless. Characters convey meaning through gesture and pointing at stuff, like the picture of what looks like a magic tree. And that's how we learn that we're going to go find some magic tree to save our dad. Well, kind of like Hyper Light Drifter, this is an action adventure platforming game that has no written text at all.
Yeah.
So it achieves a storytelling accomplishment for doing this, and the start of the game kicks it off pretty well. Because I had no trouble understanding what I was doing and what my motives were, just through environmental interaction and seeing my sick dad and the sort of physical gesture formation of the kids and the doctor.
Yeah, it accomplishes a lot through pantomime.
Mm-hmm. And it's a grief that's universal isn't quite the right word, but that sort of gets what I'm looking at. Like, it couldn't be something very subtle. Like, it couldn't be a grief of like, oh, the bank's mortgage, like the house, our interest payments. Like, it's like your mother's dead. Like,
we couldn't tell the story of Magic Pendulum, the quest for color, in this way.
Yeah, the subtlety of the storytelling in that.
Of how a government wants to take children's land and also zap color from all existence to enslave doodles. We couldn't get that with just hand motions.
No. But in terms of the opening, this is probably the first game I can think of where a protagonist has been like afraid of water, and I've just been like, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I totally get why you're afraid of water.
Yeah. Yep. Never learned how to swim. Weird.
Yeah, like, I wonder why not. That's crazy.
I think it actually plays a pretty important mechanical change, but I wish they actually leaned into this harder, because you had to find some ways for the brothers to be different and unique. Some examples include Big Brother is taller and therefore can jump up to higher ledges, or Little Brother is smaller and can squeeze into tight spaces like through bars of fences and stuff like that.
Yeah, Big Brother's stronger, so he can boost Little Brother up to places.
He can pull heavier levers and stuff like that. Like, there's important mechanical differences here.
But I think one of the subtler differences that they make use of pretty immediately is that the personality differences of the characters actually play significant gameplay roles.
Sure.
So every one of the different, or at least most of the context-sensitive actions that you can take, they're just like characters wandering the environment and different things that you can walk up to and then press the action button, and the character will do something with it, like a bench or talk to a person in town. And depending on which brother talks to that person, there will be a different interaction. And the big brother is kind of more mature, and he'll seemingly have a thoughtful dialogue with someone, and the little brother is more of a little jerk.
Yeah, he's
So,
kind of a dick, like
Yeah.
to like lots of people. Which I mean, I guess he's just young.
Ends up being important later in the game.
yeah, but
Yeah.
they do a good job of showing, like, for example, when you're trying to leave your town at the very beginning of the game, there's a guard who will not let the bridge down to let you leave. When the big brother tries to talk to the guy and convince him to let them go, the guy just falls back to sleep and says, "Yeah, go fuck yourself." Whatever. When the little brother interacts with the guy, he grabs a bucket of water and throws it in the dude's face, and then the guy wakes up and then will listen to Big Brother.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I'll open the gate.
Yeah. So you see that the personality pretty early on, they do a good job of showing you that these brothers, yes, there's physical stuff going on, but also they are emotionally on very different places. And their differences are not necessarily qualitative. One is not better than the other. They both have different functions, and their personalities cause them to see the world differently. So I think great work especially with no language.
Absolutely. I would have liked, in terms of this character development, maybe it makes sense, because he's an older male. But I would have liked to understand sort of how the older brother dealt with his grief. I mean, really, when you think about it, it's sort of a 1A, 1B type situation. The younger brother is really the key here for reasons that we'll get into later as well. But a little bit more just how the older brother was dealing with his grief from the mother's passing, especially maybe with the relationship to the little brother. Because, I mean, there obviously, at some point, some blame probably crept in there. Right?
Yeah.
So just how he dealt with that would have been interesting. But, I mean, the game's short. It's like 3 hours. They can't do everything.
Yeah. And at least early on, I think they make very clear that they are on a quest. There's not a lot of time. The time that you stop and ruminate on things is mostly sitting on benches and interacting with objects. It's not necessarily, there's no dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
There's no just talking things out. It's Abba, Abba, and then let's do the thing.
Also, can you think of too many two-person quest narratives? It's usually like one person or, like Lord of the Rings. You have a group.
Well, I think of every game that has the word "and" in it. Ratchet and Clank, Jack
Okay.
and Daxter,
All right.
Banjo,
I mean,
Kazooie. Just a few
there's-
that come to
there's no
mind.
end there. But like
Okay,
Ratchet
but you
and
know what I
Clank,
mean.
Like Clank's the sidekick.
Yeah, there's a
Or
bunch of
Ratchet,
sidekick
which
games.
one's which? The Clank's the robot, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Ratchet and Clank. That's also sidekick. Jack and Daxter is also, I guess, sidekick. Banjo Kazooie.
You wouldn't
Sidekick.
say Clark is Lewis's sidekick, right? Like it's Lewis and Clark.
Fair enough.
I think an example would be The Last of Us.
Yeah,
Okay.
Joel and Ellie are pretty mutually involved in that story.
I think a lot of the
I've never
a lot
read
of
it, but
oh no the Nathan Drake games, Drake's Fortune,
Uncharted.
all those.
yeah,
Yeah,
fair.
I don't think they're true to character. Usually it's just Nathan Drake, but he will have other characters kind of run into his story. But it's definitely his story.
Never Alone's kind of a two character game. If you talk about the white Eskimo fox, the white fox and the Eskimo girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good example.
But you're right. It's
Okay.
it's uncommon and difficult to pull off.
Yeah.
And either has to be because like in all the Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Banjo Kazooie, you're controlling one unit. They're attached at the hip, or in backpack form, whatever you're going to call it. You're really controlling one character, but different button mappings will allow each person to do different abilities. It's rare, and this is one of the only times that I've seen it done, where you're actually individually have a complete control scheme for both characters on one player.
Mhm.
That is a little bit unheard of.
Yeah. It asks you to emotionally relate with both of them in a way that I think many of the duo games do not. Like the sidekick games, you are the main character, and then the sidekick's just there to crack wise.
Right. He's comic relief. And this game has no comic relief.
Well, very little.
Minimal comic relief, yeah.
You have to look for it. It's very easy to miss because if you just play the main story, you're just going to be hella sad.
There's one upbeat part.
I mean, my upbeat part was when there was a little girl playing basketball, and then I took the ball and scored, and then I scored on her again, and then I threw her ball away.
I threw her ball in the well.
Really, you guys are assholes. I knew that was an achievement that you could get, and I was like, I just don't want that one. I don't want to be a intentional asshole to some little child.
Oh, no. I scored on her a few times. I didn't throw it in the well. I threw it down the hill.
I threw it in the well. I was like, you're not good.
That was an achievement to just like throw it in the well and just be a jerk.
Now, the part I was talking about was with the your ogre friend. Maybe
ogre friend is great.
I don't know.
Turtles are great.
Yeah, the turtles are pretty cool too.
We'll talk about those discrete interactions shortly. But
yeah, so once you leave your village, I believe the first area is you start going to the mines, right?
I think it's you see the troll first before you go to the mines.
Climb the mountain.
You do the mountain climbing tag team with the troll. At numerous parts of this game, you will be introduced to a third journeying partner, and they will in some way enable you to handle an environmental challenge or present some new mechanic for that world. There's probably 8 or 10 different sort of discrete environments in this game, and it was beautifully done that all of them have a slightly different flavor, and they ask new things of the brothers. There's new challenges to face with the brothers, new simultaneous actions, new environmental interactions. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens in these new environments.
Yeah, and the troll one. What was the troll mechanic?
You had to you were trying to climb a mountainous hillscape. He would like grab you and toss you up to ledges that you couldn't get to, and sometimes he would like grab onto a cliff, and then his other hand would grab to the other side, and you'd like crawl across his arms to get across distances that you couldn't otherwise.
Minor point too, but in each of these environments, there's a bench.
Yes.
You can sit on the bench and take a quiet moment. And the really cool part about sitting on the bench is typically you can see the entire environment laid out before you. Like the elevation changes or you're in a different area. And it's just gorgeous, right? When you can see like, oh, look, that's where I've been. And you can sort of trace your path. It's a nice little sort of quiet respite, let's say.
This reminds me a lot of Jotun, because there were multiple points in that game that made you stop and look. This is more overt. This is more just kind of in your face. Walk to this bench, press the action buttons, stop and look. Jotun did it in a more subtle and passive sense. For example, you have to walk across this bridge in Jotun. We might as well do a big pan out shot of what's behind you. This happens a couple of times in Brothers. One option that, or I guess instance that comes to mind is when you meet the young girl who is flirtatious with the older brother. There's a time when you're walking with her and you see in the backdrop this sort of glorious aurora borealis night sky, and that's a great example of a passive stop and look, but in many cases these benches are active stop and looks. They offer mechanical advantages too, because you can sometimes see how levels are laid out and sort of plan what you're going to do going into it.
Yeah.
There was for a quest narrative, right? Especially one where like dear Lord, my father's dying. There's not really ever a sense of like rush. You know what I mean? Like everybody always seems to be sort of taking their time with this whole thing, which was nice, right? Because you got to see these environments. But I would have liked if there was like a little bit more of a clock. Like, listen, like not as if like, oh, you took 3 hours and 5 minutes to finish the game, your father dies. Or, hey, you did it in less than 3 hours, he lives. But, like, just some sense that, like, yo, we need to get this done.
Yeah, the characters could have pantomimed, hurry up.
Yeah, right,
at some point.
But no, it's very sort of slow and deliberate.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of to the game's credit that it lets some of these areas breathe. I think that it might do the story a bit of a disservice, like you said, or the immediacy of the story. But it's just like the dead giants, that giant battlefield.
Oh, man, that was great.
Like, that was an amazing locale. I think the snowy village that you come into with the invisible monster. That was pretty crazy. There were a lot of environments that were just really...
Let me see what it looks like.
Say that again, Pete? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying when you were talking about the frozen monster, I know it's sort of a tacky response, but I would have liked to see what the monster was. You know, like if you're going to have an invisible monster, show it to me at some point. Just so I can be like, yeah, that's what it looks like. Okay.
Even if it's something like snow gets like brushed off a rooftop and it paints a faint outline,
right.
you can just give us like horns and big claws. You don't have to show us its facial features necessarily, but just give us something.
Like I said, I get that that's a little tacky of me, but all the same.
What, you don't like subtlety, Pete?
Yeah, I know, right?
Weird. Well, I think that, like, a lot of the locations, the weird cultists, when you do the stacking, like, a lot of those different levels, or what are they? What is their deal?
Yeah, they're like gods, like two people on their shoulders or something.
Well, if you look at the cave paintings, there's some kind of being that just is tall and has 4 arms.
Okay.
And so when the brothers, we should sort of go... It'd almost be good to go through level by level and describe what each one is, so we can actually talk about these in proper context. Let me pull up like the level list so we can go through this really quick.
The first one is the mountain. Then I think you go into the mines.
Yep.
And you save like a lady troll.
Yep. It's the nice troll's wife, I'm assuming. Well, I don't know if trolls have marriage, but they seem betrothed at least.
Yeah. I forget, what's the one after that?
After which one? The mines?
After the mines.
Is that the giants? Like the giants' house?
I'm trying to find a list of levels, but they call them chapters.
Yeah.
So they just call them chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 and stuff. Let me go through this, and I can pick it up. Give me just a second.
Sure, but from one perspective, it's odd that all of these different locations exist in the same world.
Yeah, and they're like just within like a short
walking distance,
right?
Yeah. So I don't know that the contact, there's some yada 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 happening.
Yeah, the geography's not perfect, but it's all right.
That's fine. I'd rather have it be breathtaking than plausible.
Yeah, right. I don't want to just like walk through one village and like, oh, there's the tree of life right there. Okay.
Or it takes 5 hours. Look, they walked for 10 miles, for 10 days. It's fine. It's fine.
I guess you could say like at certain points during the game they do cut to the father like sort of slowly dying in the hut with the doctor. Maybe those are like the transit moments.
Yes. Yeah. So what did you guys, of the different mechanics, the one-off mechanics, which ones did you enjoy the most?
So there's one moment where you're sort of scaling up into this giant's castle, and the two brothers tie themselves together with a rope, and they sort of use it as a pendulum to swing back and forth. Now, my problem with this mechanic was I don't think the little brother could hold the bigger brother's weight. That doesn't make any sense to me. But that's the best mechanically moment, I think, in the whole game. I think that's the most fun, plausibility issues aside.
Yeah. I did like stacking the brothers up like Voltron, though.
Yeah, that was good.
When they form up like Voltron, little brother the head.
There's a part where this is at the very beginning of the game where you're trying to get past a dog, and you have to jump from sort of elevated part to elevated part, and one brother will shout, and the dog will run over. Then the other brother will run, and then he'll shout, and the dog runs over there. That was
really cool too.
That was nice too.
I found a decent list of the levels. So the first thing you do is go through the rest of the village, where you see some of those sort of those like trolls that are mining. That's chapter 2. Chapter 3 is where you're walking through the graveyard with the wolves.
All right. Yeah.
You see after that you see the cutscene where the man who is attempting to commit suicide.
Right.
That's sort of a more like just like empty dead kind of world. Let's see. The next one is the giants that are fallen in battle.
Right. That was the coolest environment as far as I was concerned.
That was.
I think that was the most like fleshed out cool environment.
Just grisly too. You had to sort of hack off these giant limbs in order to move them across the environment so you could get around. Just gruesome.
After that, we get to the cultists. But somewhere between there, you do the castle thing with the caged bird.
Right.
Yeah, cultists, and then
ice level?
You do the ice world with the girl. Then something happens with the siblings, and then you get to the tree of life.
Right.
Then endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The land with the giants. I think it's kind of remarkable that they came up with so many unique mechanics for each of these levels, considering the central conceit. I could have seen them trying to do a lot less. I feel like Hellblade is an example of that. Hellblade had a lot of really different environments, but ultimately they only had like 3 different ways to interact with them.
Yeah, you're just sort of looking for signs each and every time.
Yeah, and this game, they made a lot of unique mechanics that I don't know how much in terms of coding. Now, since they're doing a lot of context-sensitive stuff, they probably had to do a lot more coding than I'm thinking. But by doing all these one-offs, they might have been able to get that much more unique gameplay. I don't know that it was necessarily easy to do, but it felt very organic. Everything seemed to flow from a similar place logically.
Yeah, it did. Like, it's pretty easy when you say we're just going to have one action button, and this causes an interaction. One thing that is similar throughout the entire game is what you're looking for to interact. It's going to be a handle or a lever or a winch, like a little like crank or something like that, and those things are consistent, but what they end up doing is very different.
Or a character.
Yeah, or a character to speak to or interact with, verbally or hand gestury. So like when you are talking to the crazy scientist guy about borrowing his paraglider thing, you're ultimately pulling levers and cranking winches and stuff like that, and you're doing the same thing in the mines, but you're not preparing a paraglider. You're like moving cranes with hooks on them to carry your brothers, and you're doing the exact same thing in the giants battlefield, but you're like pulling crossbows back to shoot a body down so you can walk across them. It's the exact same environmental interactions as far as what you're actually interacting with, like a handle or a crank or some kind of lever, but what they end up doing is different, and that's where the creativity comes through, because it's the same interactable, but it ends up doing different things.
So was there anything about the early game that anyone wanted to call out from here?
I do want to call out that we talked about this a bit earlier about how each brother had a different interaction with most of the NPCs in the game. This was fleshed out the most in the early part of the village. They don't do that much of it throughout the game.
No, because there aren't people to interact with.
Right. There aren't that many things to interact with, but you can still find a couple. One example would be like the animals that you meet in the farm. The sort of major NPCs like the troll or the girl that you rescue from the cultists or the crazy scientist. There are really discrete and intentional brother-to-brother differences, but most of the, I guess, extra stuff happens in the first maybe 25% of the game. As far as a development standpoint, a lot of that stuff was optional, and they could have made the game without it, so I have a lot of respect for them putting opportunities for us to build like emotional and character differences, because they didn't have to do that stuff to make the game. But by adding it and making it optional, it rewards the players who are looking for it. I just have a ton of respect for any game that puts stuff in their final product that rewards the players who are looking out to find those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can we... I don't know if this necessarily qualifies as early game, but can we talk about the dream sequence?
Sure.
That's a pretty good one. That's probably like 30 or 40% through the overall story.
Right. So at a certain point, I forget what. So like the brothers, they get caught in this whirlpool basically, and the younger brother starts to drown, and the older brother has to dive down and save him, right? And when basically the screen cuts to black, younger brother wakes up, and when he wakes up, what he sees is his mother lying there as a giantess, I guess I should say. Now, it's very sort of visually arresting, right? It's interesting. I don't really know what it's doing. Like, why is it there?
So when they first wake up, it doesn't look like a dream sequence.
Right.
Only like as it goes on does it obviously become a dream sequence. It actually ends with the dream sequence goes, they wake up on the shore, they're walking and it's normal controls, everything's good. You climb some rocks, get up onto this platform, you see giant mom, and big brother becomes kind of like groggy or like uncontrollable, and at that point he's actually uncontrollable. You can only control little brother. Mm-hmm. That kind of sort of spoiled it for me that ultimately in a lot of ways the story is about little brother. There's definitely two brothers at play here, but a lot of the things that make the most important parts of this story matter is how it relates to little brother. And that was one of the sort of turning points for me. There was no point where the big brother was the central focus. He sees his giant mom. Giant mom has her giant hand clutching sick dad, who's normal sized, in a way that's sort of inaccessible for the little brother. And he's trying to interact with big brother, trying to interact with mom, and it doesn't end up working. But then eventually big brother ends up like attacking him and choking him out in a nightmare escape. Like, that just didn't click with me. I don't understand why that happened either. That's kind of a question mark for me.
I think that might be where like the guilt I was talking about earlier, that might be where it comes in. Like the younger brother thinks the older brother blames him for it. And my guess for giant mom is like it's supposed to indicate here's like how large this memory looms in this kid's mind, right? Like it's all consuming.
That was literally what I was going to say.
Yeah, right. And that seems to be the fairly straightforward interpretation. But I mean, the kid saw his mom drown. I don't think I need a dream sequence where she's a giant to be like, hey, this was an important moment in this kid's life.
Well, I guess with the mom holding onto the dad and then the brother choking him, you get the sense that she's looming large. He sees his dad going with her, and he still thinks his brother blames him for what happened to the first one and potentially the dad too.
Right.
And so you get the sense that there's a lot of stuff going on inside of this kid who otherwise he's not mute, but the game does not let him express it. And so maybe the developers just felt that having this moment to reinforce this character's mental state would serve the players a little bit better than just hoping that the first cutscene did it.
All right. I mean, I get it. I guess one of my main issues is I think the choking is the more interesting part, and that's literally overshadowed when you have the giant body of the mother in the scene as well.
Yeah, I think that you maybe don't need to make that big of a picture. You could have the mom there just as a normal person, normal sized, and then have the choking, and you get the same effect without it, with the emphasis being more on the relationship between the two brothers instead of on the little brother's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that ultimately it just giving a moment for these brothers to kind of develop a little bit instead of just relentless progress forward, probably good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I don't know. Dream sequences are sort of hackneyed too.
You just don't like dream sequences.
That's part of it. I mean, that's a big part of it. But
well, Pete, didn't you mention like way earlier in the course of this podcast, not this one, but just in general, like years ago, but there were a couple of like archetypal cop-outs for stories.
Yeah.
And one was like, a person's mentally ill, therefore they did XYZ, or like it's a time travel paradox, or like it was all a dream sequence the whole time. And there's a bunch of like cop-out versions that are supposed to be substitutes for good story writing.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to deal with the consequences. This at least is exposition. Because it occurred early enough, it wasn't like a huge deal. If it had occurred at the end, it'd be like, really, the mother was alive the whole time. Then it'd be a shit game, and I don't think we would have bothered playing it.
That's true. But instead, it's a very good game, and we recommend playing it. For me,
recommend playing what?
Brother.
I mean,
Brothers.
yeah, it's good. I don't think I recommend playing this game by yourself.
Well, it's kind of odd because I've actually played this game before. I played a little bit of it to refresh my memory for the podcast, but when I replayed it, I realized that I don't actually enjoy playing Brothers. I enjoyed the experience the first time. I don't know if I'll ever replay this game because controlling the brothers is actually, it's not that fun.
No.
Seeing all of the moments and experiencing it, I think really worked, and it did a lot, and I'm glad I played this game. But the act of playing it is not the enjoyable part. And so I feel like this is one of the games that really asks the question, how much do you get out of playing a game? What is the difference between playing and watching? And I think that actually the gameplay in Brothers adds a lot. Controlling both of the brothers, doing the activities, inhabiting both of these characters, I think makes you relate to both of them more and helps convey their relationship better than if you're just watching it. But because of the, pat your head, rub your belly at the same time nature of the gameplay, I found that it was a little bit more, I guess, daunting or a little bit more stressful than I'd like. I didn't necessarily enjoy the act of playing it.
No. And I think might be jumping the gun here, but that becomes crucial when you hit the ending as well.
Now,
Yes.
I mean, let's just get right down to it. Ultimately, what makes this game hard from a mechanical perspective is controlling two people's movement with two different control sticks in different hands, right?
Yeah.
That's,
and FYI, when I replayed this game, I tried to replay it with the PC controls, which involves putting one hand on the directional arrows, one on WASD. You control one of the brother's actions with the space bar, and the action button for the other brother is the right control key. So yeah, that's your control scheme.
That's gross.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's a really bad control scheme. I don't recommend it. Get a controller if you're going to play this game.
true. You definitely want to have a controller so you can have a more fluid left-right control for yourself. Personally, I did not have a big problem with the control scheme. That's just because after years and years of being a gamer, like I've developed a hand-eye coordination to do this. I was sort of able to do this, but I could very clearly see that a person who's like trying to get this game would present itself as a pretty new gamer friendly game.
Right.
It's primarily story based. It's a platformer. It would in other circumstances appear to be a pretty new gamer friendly experience, but it's not. And one of the ways that makes this so hard is the awkwardness of controlling two people's movement at once. I did fall victim to the weirdness of the movement on more than one occasion, but it was pretty easy for me to get it back under control. This is a game that is beautiful to watch from a speedrunning perspective or a professional player like a streamer who plays this game a lot. It's going to look gorgeous and look cool. Do they have a co-op mode in this game? I don't know.
That
actually,
I noticed.
I don't think
let me
so.
look it up to fact check. But if this game has a co-op, then it's a totally new experience. This game is fun to watch in a group, fun to play in a group, but I think this game's actually losing some of its utility by it ultimately being a single player experience.
See, I don't know if this game would work co-op.
Yeah, I think it definitely won't at the end, but I think that it loses a lot of its impact. And it's an odd thing because I didn't necessarily want to play this game a second time, but I think that it's not a bad game. It's not like it's extra difficult. I don't know if it's just that the nature of the platforming didn't grab me as much as I would like, or maybe I've been ruined by games with reward-based feedback loops.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just not getting that little drip has ruined me for playing games that just ask me to play with the reward being the story.
Right.
But I don't know what it was.
No, I think
Just quick aside, it doesn't have an inherent co-op feature But what people have said is that they play with one controller and two hands. Like they'll be sitting side by side and controlling individually.
That sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard.
Well, I will say that I actually played in a Super Smash Brothers tournament where me and my friend John, who has been on the podcast, wanted to enter the tournament, but there was one spot left, so we said we would play Super Smash Brothers, each holding either side of the controller, and we actually went 1-2 against the guy that we played.
Nice.
I don't know why I thought of that, but we played Ganondorf, and we hit hard.
We punched him real good.
I had to I'm the Ganondorf player between the two of us, and
so were you the buttons, or were you
I was
the movement?
I was the movement and the shielding and the rolling and the jumping, and I had to dictate do this move right now, and the other guy could hear us. So we're look, he's off the stage. We're gonna go for a spike. I'll set you up, and the opponent would just know what we were doing the whole time and had to just mind game us back and forth. It was honestly fantastic. So I've had pretty positive one controller, two player experiences before, and this is actually a pretty good time if there was going to be one for a one controller, two player experience. But
this would be the game to do it.
It could have been just done with two controllers.
Well, that's actually now you've got me thinking of different games I can play two players, one controller.
Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run right around the corner, folks. We could create some hot bullshit with this for donation incentives.
You knew where my mind went.
All three of us have to play one game on one controller.
Oh my god.
That would be pretty good.
Okay,
we'll take this offline.
Okay.
So, I think the biggest gripe I had with this game when I played it was so when you find the girl who joins you and she starts flirting with the older brother, I immediately think something's up.
Yeah. She's going to drive a wedge between these two brothers.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously.
Yes, and
that
she does some
wasn't
stuff
obvious for me because I'm not a literary genius like you two. I was like, oh, something.
Watch a movie,
something good's gonna happen.
They're on this quest, but older brother's gonna get married. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Little brother will love it. There'll be a threesome now.
My ultimate mistake was thinking that something good was gonna happen.
Yeah, that was a good call too.
I mean, she does some stuff that's supernaturally strong, or she does some stuff that's a little odd.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, somehow.
I didn't think about that, but she makes 40-foot jumps across ledges that we have to Assassin's Creed parkour across. She's like, yeah, I'll just jump it.
Jump it. It's fine.
Yeah, there's some foreshadowing that something's up.
Thinking back, I should have seen that. That was a red flag.
In retrospect, the cultists, not that bad. In retrospect, they're pretty good guys.
In retrospect, they realize some stuff that we wish we had. But when the game reveals that she lures you into some tunnels, and in the tunnels, she's a spider woman.
Yep.
She's a literal monster.
She's half woman, half spider.
Half spider, and she's lured the brothers to eat them, but mostly the big brother.
Mm-hmm.
When the ultimate enemy, the thing that the two brothers cannot overcome, is a woman.
Yeah.
Who's a temptress.
Yeah.
Who is a literal man-eater.
Yep.
And that's what separates these two brothers. I was like, oh, so wait. Is the story here? I mean, I get that the larger story is about these two brothers, their relationship, and then one brother, because she ultimately does kill the older brother.
She stabs him in the chest with one of her legs, basically.
Now I want to talk about this part of the game, honestly, because
then you rip her legs off one at a time.
Let Gino finish his
go for it.
His very well warranted point about what's happening here.
Yeah, so he ultimately kills the brother, and yes, the larger argument is about the little brother growing and being able to overcome the loss of his brother and the loss of his mother, and kind of grow to become the man he's meant to be. They basically fridge the older brother a little bit at the last minute here, but the allegorical argument that you're making that it is the thing to do it is is a woman, one of the only women in the game.
That like brotherhood's a sacred thing until women get involved.
It's ultimately
Yes.
bros before hoes. Let's just get this right.
Yeah, basically that's one of the big arguments in this game.
Bros before spider hose, technically, but I don't think it would have made that much of a difference if she had not been a spider.
No, I mean, I guess they could have just removed the allegory, and it was like, oh, the older brother then shacked up with this girl and didn't want to keep going on the quest.
Well, yeah, screw dad, whatever.
Yeah, but it sat a little. It felt after all of this very beautiful and I think nuanced stuff that's happening, all of these great feats that the brothers have accomplished together, having their downfall be a woman.
Yeah.
Though she's a monster, like there's extra story reasons, but when they gender it that way, that's the argument that it's making.
Yeah, it's very obvious what it's doing. It's not subtle.
Yeah, and I didn't think like you can make that argument, but I felt like the game did not necessarily need to go there. I didn't agree with that I don't agree with that argument.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I wish that there was something else, perhaps, that could have been the dividing factor between the two boys. But ultimately, this is a very like male-centric game. Yeah. I don't think it's inherently bad, because it's not evil to have a story focused on male development.
Oh no, not at all.
But
no,
it is a very male-focused game. There could have been other ways to make there be this sort of natural divide between the brothers and introducing a female. It didn't have to be that. It could have been maybe the brother saw another opportunity, like joining up with an army or a military service, which is another pretty masculine buy-in, or getting a business opportunity, or getting like a big job or something.
Maybe they fight that invisible ice monster.
Yeah, like maybe he's like, I need to protect this village.
You just die. Like,
there's a bunch of ways you can do it. I just think that ultimately the kind of you can have this brotherly relationship without having this kind of retrograde opinion of women in there as well. Because in this game, I think the women that exist, there's the troll wife who you need to save, who's also a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
There's the mom, who's this saint, basically, who dies.
Martyr, almost.
She's this martyr. She's also dead. There's the girl who needs to first be rescued and then is a temptress who's your divider. And then there's a bunch of NPCs who you interact with for like half a second. But women barely play a role in this game, and the roles that they do play are often cliched.
Do you think it's worse that she's a spider? Like if she had been like half woman, half... Well, Snake wouldn't have been any better. That has its own biblical issues. But if she'd been like half woman, half like lion, do you think that would have been better than like a literal Black Widow?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been less obvious. I mean, she's literally spinning a web and leading the older brother into a trap.
It's all a little on the nose.
Yeah, it's really obvious mechanically. It's really obvious symbolically.
My problem with that scene...
You should have had an apple at some point, too, just to do the whole thing.
So I also had a problem with that interaction, that whole scene, that whole narrative plot point. But it wasn't necessarily because of the female interaction. I had a problem with that boss fight because the other boss fights that you have, and there's only few. There's the other troll that comes to mind that you have to sort of knock down the hole. That was actually great. I loved that boss interaction. Here's the spider. I think there was one more that I can't remember. Maybe not, actually.
I don't think so. There were like other set pieces.
That much.
Anyway, what I had a problem with was this 8-legged creature you fight by the younger brother being in this hamster wheel, and she's going after the big brother. Little brother like bumps into her with his hamster wheel spiderweb ball thing and knocks her on her back, and big brother rips a leg off.
Yeah, ripping the legs off is...
Yeah, that's kind of brutal, but you do it
gruesome.
You do it all 8 times. The fight is clearly over after you rip off like the 4th leg. She's like clearly
mobility's
done.
Compromised. Yeah, like
she's clearly done fighting after you rip off leg number 4. because the gameplay changes. Legs 1 through 3, she still jumps on the ceiling and tries to attack the big brother. After leg number 4, she has clearly been disabled, and they could escape and leave if they wanted to. She is no more threat. But this game makes you take it all the way to completion in a way that's bad. That's what ultimately kills Big Brother. Like, if they had just left when the fight was clearly won, he would have been okay. They could have just bounced. But they make you rip off legs 5, 6, 7, and 8 really intentionally. It takes a long time to do, and it's just like forcing
looking.
you to be extra brutal. And I think that was ultimately a bad narrative choice.
It was grim.
Because you could have left after maybe pulling off the 6th leg. Sure. But just don't make me pull off all 8 legs when you clearly don't have to. The fight was 100% won, and you could have just left at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it was a few steps away, but in the realm of, like, Kratos from God of War. Like, you're ripping all the legs off of this thing. I was half expecting the older brother to take the last leg and then just use it as a spear.
There was one other part of the game where I think they just take it way too far and make it just go all the way too seriously. I want to talk about that part too, but we'll get to that, I'm sure, later. There's 2 parts that I think make them go way too far.
Well, can we, now that we've given the reveal, right? The older brother dies. This is a point I've been wanting to bring up for a while now. So the brother dies, and then suddenly you only have to control one character, right?
And he has the powers of both.
Right? Like, setting that aside, the game gets way easier after the brother dies.
Can I pause for 1 second? Because what I want to talk about, it happens right before this.
Okay. Later.
Yeah, we'll circle right back to this, but
that's fine.
We just went straight to the end game, which is not bad because that's basic. We're basically there.
We're there.
But remember how I said the spider went too far? I think the burying your brother sequence went too far.
Oh shit! Yeah, I totally glossed over that one.
So like when you leave the spider world, Big Brother is alive but injured, and you get to the Tree of Life shortly thereafter. It's like your very next place. You just arrive there. Awesome. Mission accomplished? Question mark? Big Brother is obviously injured at this point, can't climb the Tree of Life, whatever it is. So Little Brother does it. That's fine. He gets some of its life-saving tree syrup / water. When he comes back down, Big Brother has passed away from his injuries. He tries to revive Big Brother by feeding him the life water or whatever it is. It doesn't work. He's already dead.
Yep.
But then you got to spend like a full 15 minutes burying your brother's dead body, which involves a cutscene where you are hand digging a grave.
Yeah.
You have to walk much more slowly. Your character movement is slowed, and you're in a very sad physical state. Drag your brother's corpse into a hand-dug grave, and then push multiple piles of dirt on top of your brother's dead body. And this whole thing happens over a good 10-15 minutes of cutscene and slow movement. And I get what they were doing. It's impactful. So I don't think it's inherently bad that they wanted to emphasize this moment. But I think it was just a little bit too much. Too much seasoning.
So this one, it really reminded me of, there's a similar sequence in The Walking Dead. And that really, I think, having you go through the mechanics of burying someone, it's odd that multiple games have done it now, but I think it's something that no one ever talks about. And outside, ever, the act of laying someone to rest and what that means. And those things don't just happen. We often fast forward, even in our experiences with death, we don't realize that when someone dies, they don't just get escorted to the wake or to the funeral home. Someone has to come and take them away. And until that person comes, they are there. And as someone who has gone through that and some of that experience, I think by emphasizing the physicality involved and that these things don't just happen, it's hard and it's rough and it can feel gratuitous, but it is real in a way that I appreciate. I feel like it's also worth bringing in now some of the background of this game and the development, because we haven't mentioned it, but this game is a collaboration between Starbreeze Studios and Swedish filmmaker Josef Fares, Josef, and then last name Fares. So I'm sorry, I don't speak Swedish, so
You're probably close, yeah.
I think Josef
Yeah.
Fares is my guess. But he actually made this game, or helped conceptualize this game, I believe after his brother passed away.
Okay. That makes sense.
So this game is kind of a way of him working through that experience. And so it makes sense to me how, like, that ending sequence, giving it all of that gravitas, focusing the player in on it, especially after you've controlled both of these brothers for so long. I get it, and I understand it as a artistic decision, especially like look at what I've gone through, look at what this means to me, understand it, please. But I also see where you're coming from, Billy, after it doesn't need to be said that explicitly. It's most of what you get emotionally from it is conveyed just from the act. If it was all faster, if you didn't have to do it all yourself, I think that it emotionally would impact 90% of the audience the same.
So,
do Steam games get ratings? Like
they do.
E for everyone, T for teen?
Oh,
do we have any
yes.
idea what this one is?
Yeah, they do get a general rating.
Yeah, Brothers has an ESRB rating. Almost every game does.
Not that, like, I obviously don't want to, like, pearl clutch and be like, think of the children. I'm just curious, like, what, like, if nudity and violence gets a certain rating, what does burying your own brother get?
Yeah. T for teen.
T for
violence, blood, crude humor.
Okay, that makes sense.
But not deep emotional distress.
Yeah, right. Not like heart-rending approach to your own mortality and that of your loved ones.
This game approaches mortality throughout the entire game, not just with mom and brother.
Sure.
There are
the
giants.
Like what?
there. So yeah, I do want to talk about that a little bit, but we got to ultimately get to your mechanical discussion, Pete, about how the game gets easier after older brother dies. We won't forget about that. But some of the achievements that you see throughout the game are noteworthy. There are some hints at the joy of life as well. So some of the achievements that you have are... Actually, let me finish my first point. Death shows up in other parts of the game. One example is in the graveyard scene. Now, obviously, it's a graveyard, but something that may be not as obvious to see is that when you're going through the river, there's also these like floating candles, which is a very common cultural practice of letting a candle float away in some body of water as a way to send off the spirit of some lost loved one. That shows up. You see the scene where a poor man is attempting to hang himself, and you learn that it's because you don't really know why, but apparently his entire home burned down in a fire, and it killed his spouse and young child.
Mm-hmm.
Death shows up in other parts of this game. The tragedy of war and physical conflict shows up in the giants' battleground, where there are these numerous dead giants. The instance of death, either through war or through tragedy like a fire, or through natural loss of old age, whatever the graveyard scene's trying to bring about, all of the aspects of losing someone show up in this game as an overt theme. I think overall it was handled very respectfully. It just was personally a little too much for me.
All right,
it's a grim thing and a difficult thing to look at.
But I think ultimately the game was pretty responsible with how it handled some of this stuff.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's no, like, it's not played for shock value. It's definitely not played for, like, laughs or anything. Like, It's suitably grim. It's suitably serious. And it conveys the difficulty of these sorts of things.
Some of the positive achievement interactions are reuniting the troll and their spouse and making the rabbits play nice in the rabbit pen. And making the old inventor like dance to the tune when you play the windpipes right, and saving the bird who's caged in that. It's like a little bird griffin thing that's caged up in a big giant laboratory castle workshop. There's all this cool stuff that is invoking the joys of life, but they're always juxtaposed and kind of bookended by these just tragic death scenes. So I appreciated the emotional roller coaster, just kind of leaned into it too hard for me.
Yeah. But I think that, to your original point, Pete, about the game getting much easier, I think that they're trying to make the point that the brother has grown. He's now become an adult, basically. When his older brother passes away, now he must do these things for himself, and now he can. And because he has gone through this journey, he can. And I think that the point is made well through that now the things that he once needed help for, he can do himself. But I think that, like you said, now the game is easier, and some of the gameplay depth goes away with it. Like, it's less interesting to have one character who can do all the things.
Well, let's just take a step back. Like, there's only like 15 minutes of gameplay at that point. So
yeah, it's not that much.
95% of the game is two brothers, unique interactions. It's only for the very last resolution of the game, the last like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, are you doing this one brother.
And they just give you all the examples of things that they used to do together, like the big brother having to boost the little brother, or the little brother can't swim and now he can swim. Like all these different things that he can now do himself.
Well, hang on, he can't do them himself. Because if you walk up to each of those interactions and you just press the little brother's act button, he can't do it. You have to press the little brother's act button and then also press the big brother's act button to like channel big brother's motivational energy through little brother, and that makes him do it. So when you're swimming, if you walk up to the water and swim, he won't do it. But if you press the button that otherwise would have let you grab onto Big Brother's back, it now makes him comfortable with swimming. And if he's got to jump to that ledge, he won't do it by himself. But if you press Big Brother's act button, it then makes him like do a super jump, then he can get it.
Yeah.
Gino, I think your reading is the correct one insofar as that was the attempt, right? That was what the authors, well, say authors, that's what the developers, the creators wanted.
And with the symbolism of having to actually press the extra button, you also get the brother has not left you.
But I think
your other brother's not gone.
You could then do a version of a reductio and say, but the parallel lesson there is if you could do all those things yourself, others are just a burden, right? Like if you're self-sufficient, your life is easier with no one else around you.
Yeah.
Which
and I think that
I don't know that there's a better way to do it, right? When the brother dies, the game has to go on somehow, and I don't know what the solution is. I just think that based on the control scheme, it undercuts the message just slightly.
Yeah, and I think that they're definitely going for the brother is not gone. The younger brother can now carry on,
Absolutely.
and he hasn't left. His power, his emotional support is still there, living on. But yeah, if you had one person who could do both things, and I think that's a tension, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, this game, I really enjoyed it. It's really complex for me, what it makes me feel, because I think a lot of the moments that it deals with death and it deals with the relationship between these two brothers, the visuals, this game is excellent on so many levels. But I think that fundamentally some of its message with that turn is fundamentally misogynist.
When you say turn, you're referring to Spider-Woman?
With the Spider-Woman.
Yeah.
With the Spider-Woman.
I think that's obvious, yeah.
And so this piece is really, it's textured. It's got layers to it. There are moments that I think are unequivocally excellent. And there's also this low rumble of something that I disagree with, though I understand what they're going for. And so I don't think that this damns the game at all. I just think that it's important to call out that these two things, they're not even necessarily in conflict. Like, I think that the worldview that this game expresses is cohesive. It's just one that I disagree with part of it pretty extremely.
And a lot of this game, because it's short and sweet in a lot of ways, had to be kept simple. I'm not going to try to defend the choice of having this like inherent Black Widow female succubus type figure, because ultimately I don't like there being a female villain whose mode of villainy is like entrapping a man through like sexual wiles. But I will say it's easy to do and is very accessible for every player. Again, that's not defending it, but from a storytelling perspective, if you don't have a ton of time to develop a strong antagonist figure, you kind of have to go with something easy. And since this game is a series of short vignettes of different worlds, it might have been their best execution option. Now, granted, in larger games that have more storytelling build up and time and resources to do this, I am expecting more. I'm not going to just inherently fault the game for utilizing a classic Black Widow character.
Can
I just
sort of, well, yeah,
quick?
Gino, sure, absolutely.
Just real quick, I just want to make very clear, I'm not faulting the game. I disagree with the argument it's making. I don't think that the way they executed it was in any way poor. Like, they did what they were going for. I disagree with the argument that I believe that they're making. And that's fine. Like, I don't have to agree with everything the game did. And Pete, what is your...
I was just going to sort of cut the baby in half and be like, I think they did it out of potentially laziness more than anything else. But I think their laziness reflected a lack of understanding of the sort of cultural work these tropes do when they're perpetuated.
Yeah, and I actually, when I first played this game, I actually blogged about it and did a reading of this with Frozen, because they both came out in very similar times, both set in very similar locales, both with relationships between siblings, both with the main antagonist being a character who is of the opposite gender, who is trying to use their wiles to separate the two siblings in question. But in Frozen, that ultimate villain is not successful, and their villainy is not... Like, there are multiple male characters in that game. There's a little bit more nuanced of what men get to do in that world, and neither of the men in that game that are kind of... that movie, that are romantic interests succeed in splitting up the two titular characters. And I feel like they both are expected to be very simple, very accessible stories. At least, big scope. They're both very fairy tale story sort of executions, but just adding in that additional layer of nuance to each of the characters, I feel like just did enough to make it feel like, Frozen's not operating in what would be the opposite of misogyny?
Oh, shit. Misandry.
Misandry. It didn't have that sort of argument in it because they let men do other things, be positive, have more humanity.
Now, Gino, I'm glad you brought up Frozen. I'm very glad you brought up Frozen, because I want to give a hot take.
Go ahead.
All right. Hot take. Here it is. I don't think this game works if the siblings are brother and sister. I think this game only works if the siblings are the same gender, whether it's both brothers or both sisters.
Why do you think that?
I just think there aren't any sort of... I can't think of any narratives where this works, where the siblings would be on equal footing in the same way. I think every time you have a brother and a sister, they exist in such disparate spheres that you couldn't have a game like this. And I'm not saying like in real life, like whatever. I'm saying in terms of cultural narratives, I don't think it works.
I mean, I think that you have to set up the cultural context to where they would both be on equal footing in this way. I think you would need to make it understood that we are not treating gender as this binary that these two characters operate in, and their differences are solely based on their gender roles. I think you'd have to you could have the older brother be a woman. You have to also set up a context where all of those roles that the older brother fills are just normal for a woman to fill too. I think you can't then lean into the kind of gender binary stuff.
Do you think you could accomplish that in a 3-hour game?
I think it'd be hard. I think it's more difficult. I think you have to do more work on your world and on your characters and their relationship. There's a lot of shorthand that you can convey, I think, when you make them both the same gender.
Yeah, then I think, Gino, perhaps you're just more of an optimist to me, but then I only think the way that works is if you lean into other equally pernicious stereotypes. Like if, like say the older sister, she becomes like a standard sort of tomboy narrative.
I think I'm just more optimistic.
Yeah, like
I
I
think
mean, like I said, it's a hot take, but I thought I'd throw it out there, see what we thought.
I think
Yeah, sure.
I think you're onto something ultimately, that it's hard to make a dual gender, or I should maybe say just not same gender narrative, because it will require a very careful consideration of making things on equal footing. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Telling a story that involves, just to keep it simple, a male and a female protagonist, keeping separate the whole gender spectrum thing. But if you have, for example, a male and a female protagonist, then it's difficult to make them appear on equal footing in a short-term narrative perspective without making it tropey and like obvious. So
I mean, I think you can do it as long as you just don't.
I think you
lean into
can
those
too. It just has to be
stereotypes.
super intentional. And well, I don't know, it's hard because like
I just don't think I didn't see anything in this game that was gendered in any way outside of that Temptress moment. Like, there's nothing that the two brothers are doing unto themselves that are gendered male or gendered female. I don't think that necessarily climbing or doing any of those things. Physicality is not so extreme in this game. You know, they're not in a lifting competition or some shit like that.
right.
There's no cooking contest at some point. They're adventuring. They're going out and doing things, and none of the feats that they're performing are in any way, I think, gendered.
No, but
So I think you could totally just have one of the characters be female, and I think it could work.
Like ultimately, this comes down to ice climbers. Okay, they had it right the first time.
Yeah, ice climbers, both of them were fine at climbing.
They had the exact same
I believe it.
efficacy in ice climbing.
Look,
We
Popo
just got to
and
go to
Nana.
the ice climbers initiative.
Gino, where I
Is it
would
po-
disagree with you here, though, is you're looking at exclusively the narrative itself, right? And I'm saying once you make these mixed gendered siblings, the cultural context in which this game exists is such that these narratives will be thrust on the game. So the game could stay exactly the same as it is. You just change the genders of the characters. And I'm saying the way it would be read would fall into basically right. Like you'd have two. Either if it was an older sister, she would be a surrogate mother figure, or if it's a younger sister, the older brother would be protecting her. And I'm saying the game could stay exactly the same, but just because these are stock narratives, that's how it would be necessarily interpreted.
Sure, but I think that now the surrogate mother figure, I think that with the older brother, it's not a surrogate mother figure, but he's definitely a parental figure for the younger brother.
Yeah.
I think that reading the older brother protecting a younger sister is exactly what happens with the younger brother, and I don't think that there's that much. Like there's this unspoken understanding between the two because they're brothers, but I think it's, you know, I'm an older brother of a sister, so all of my experiences. Yeah, all of my experiences is with a sibling of the opposite gender. So a lot of my experiences I don't feel like would be that different if Noelle and I were, you know, the same gender or reversed.
No, but I don't think that really has any bearing here, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that's fine. I just don't. I think the readings that you think would be read into this are not that dissimilar from readings that you can already arrive at based on the relationship between the two brothers that's presented right now.
All right, fair enough.
Weird that I mentioned this game earlier, but Banjo-Kazooie might do this okay, because Kazooie technically is a female character.
Really?
And
Kazooie's a lady.
I guess
Kazooie's a pretty
haven't
lady.
paid close enough attention.
Kazooie's a pretty lady. She poops eggs.
Well, that's not I don't know. That's not gender.
I guess now that you say that.
We're not talking about where those eggs really come from, Gino, but like...
Look, roosters don't poop eggs.
You're right.
Hens poop eggs.
You're right. But it's a case where there are inherent differences between both characters, but they both are equally putting the team on their back. That's what we're trying to get at here. You got to have some ways that both characters can equally put the team on their back, and it's not in like a super hard gendered way. You have to find some way to attribute skills to a character that are not inherently gender based, and have them both contribute to a team differently in that way. And that's fine, because we already get that from Brothers the way it is right now with these genderless interactions. For example, Little Brother is typically better with animals in this game than Big Brother is. That's an example of a genderless interaction that could have been conveyed with a bi-gender or a multi-gender cast. I mean, I think we're ultimately diving too far down the rabbit hole here with this whole discussion, but I think it's worth having. That.
Wait, Billy, did you say we're getting too deep on an episode of Deep Listens?
I mean, we're getting like. We're getting almost
MO?
trenchy level deep.
Well, you can find another show then.
Yeah, right. See you guys. I'm going to go to a show called Shallow Listens. Superficial Listens is where I'm heading.
Welcome to Billy's Shallow Listens. Welcome to the Tide Pool.
I like this one. This game's good. Next week, we're going to talk about a different game. Be good or bad.
It is also good. Play it.
This game, when I look at it, my eyes feel good.
A lot of numbers. They go up and down.
I do like the idea of having the Tide Pool, though.
Oh, man.
Let's go to the Tide Pool for a second for some hot takes.
This game bad, mate. I mean, it was not pretty. Controls bad. No scoreboard.
Bears. I like bears.
Not enough explosions.
You know, the Giants were already dead when I got there.
I didn't have
like
the joy
that.
of killing them.
I wanted to see the Giants kill.
They didn't drop any souls, any rupees, any credits, no EXP. Come on, man.
Look, when I got to the end of this level, I got there real fast, and there wasn't like a portal that took me to a bonus world.
I mean, there was no magic whistle that let me transport to different worlds. Where's the pipes to drop down? No, none of that.
All great questions. This game's trash.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Tide Pool.
Our lesson here is you should have just played Mario, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't think of anything else major for Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
I think that's it.
It didn't really have a lot of like its music wasn't that strong for me. It was there in some
It was
scenes,
solid.
but like
Fine.
I feel like it
It
just
was good.
filled the blank and didn't actually add too much. Because I'm like typically a pretty music centric gamer. I care about the music and the other artistic choices. Art style was fine. It typically lended itself towards like maybe a Telltale style game with like less shading. You know, it had similar models and graphics like that.
I think a lot of the strength was in the art direction and just the design, and those benches do a lot of work.
Yeah, I think the world building here is what really did it, as opposed to the color schemes, not necessarily.
It's got a very nice geography to it.
Definitely a geographically rich landscape, and
So,
varied
Billy,
in ways.
Billy, I think it's your turn to pick the next game.
Mm-hmm.
It is my turn to pick the next game. We just played a game that was like kind of a downer and really sad emotionally, and its control scheme was pretty simple and didn't have a very high skill ceiling. And
I don't like where this is going.
So
No,
I just want to go the complete opposite.
Yep, this is bad.
No, this is going to be great. The game that I want to play for the next podcast episode is Bayonetta.
Oh,
Okay.
what? I didn't see this coming.
All right. We're going to have some interesting gender discussions.
Yeah, you see, like, I just want to go straight from this, like, super male-focused game to a just badass female protagonist with, like, witch-time hair magic.
Speaking of this. Yep.
And it's going to be just an action explosion in your face the whole time and just, like, simple humor, slapstick bullshit. And quite literally the exact opposite of Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. You only control one character. So it's basically in every way opposite.
Half the controls. This is going to be so much simpler. Half the characters, half the controls.
Try to read some Judith Butler before we get to this one.
Oh, God, that would be great. We're going to be reading Virginia Woolf and Bayonetta. So in the hours...
This will be a 16-part podcast.
So I think that Bayonetta, it would have been so much better if they had told it all first person, but then jumped between multiple perspectives and then just never told you which person. You had to figure out based on what the words they were using, which head you were in.
I'm not even sure if I've ever read a Virginia Woolf book.
Lucky you. What? I forget what's the name of Bayonetta's stereotype. Oh, we get a stereotypical Italian.
Is she Italian?
Ooh.
No, not her. She has a sidekick who's a gross Italian stereotype.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking about the little boy
Pepe
who's basically Yu-Gi-Oh! With a literal Millennium puzzle on his neck.
No, what is his name?
Probably like Spado or something. I don't know. Something just horribly racist.
It's some fuck. It's like, what is this guy's name? I need to know now.
Is it Waluigi?
Not John. Enzo.
Enzo, that's a good pick.
He's just Joe Pesci.
Yeah, literally.
All right, I'm starting to look forward to this one now.
This game is so Pete, if you don't know, this game borrows a lot from the Devil May Cry series. So it's been on my to play list, and I've played like probably a third of the game before, and I just dropped it and didn't pick it back up. But then I caught it on a Steam sale.
Same.
And I'm gonna look forward to playing this game all the way through.
I'm excited.
Yeah, she has guns on her feet.
She does.
Hands
and her clothing
feet.
Is hair.
High heels, and her hair is her clothes, and also her magic witch powers.
Yep.
I'm just into everything this game's all about.
We will be getting into witch time. We will be getting into witch time on our next episode with Bayonetta. Remember, if you want to get in touch with the show, at deeplistenspod, deeplistens.libsyn.com, or deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. Hit us up on any of those places I just said. I blacked out for a second. I said all of them, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I think so. And remember, rate and review and all those things that we ask you to do intermittently. Look, we give you breaks on when we beg for reviews and recommendations. Here's one of those times when we do so.
Please do.
So please do. So thank you, Billy.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Had a fun time with Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Ultimately, a little bit more just sad gut punching than I want, but I enjoyed the new experience of a dual character control system. Overall, I think you should check out this game. I think this game is best experienced as an audience with somebody who's already played the game and knows how to do the control scheme. I think that's the best way to experience this game, is to sort of like see it happening with a friend who's played it and already beaten it, and they're the ones that are doing the controls, because you can lose some of the story's impactfulness by the pacing problems that a weird control scheme can have.
Thank you, Pete.
Yep. Well, always a pleasure, guys. Like Billy said, if you want to have some serious feels, this is the game for you. And it's a pretty good one.
And thank you, listeners. Till next time. Peace.